There we are. I can see people flooding in, Laura.
I can too. So we know we've got something right.
Fantastic. That's a good start. Hi, everyone. This is Thomas Newman from VIVA, and I'm joining Laura Winkworth's SCS Prescene Analysis Part 1 today. Free webinar session. So this is open to anyone who has an interest in the SCS. And it's the first of many sessions we will be doing for the SCS for May 22. Today's session is 2 hours long, more or less. There will be time for questions at the end of the session. So Laura is going to walk you through the first half or so of the Prescene document that CIMA released yesterday. And we'll have time for questions at the end. There'll also be a break in the middle, 5-10 minute break at the midpoint. And this session has been recorded. All of our live sessions are recorded that we do as part of our SCS courses. They're put up on the website the first working day after each session, and they're available until 31st of August 2022, so through to the end of the August round, because it's the same Prescene that is used for May and for August. And yeah, I think that's about it. So what I'm going to do is, before Laura starts, I'm going to share my screen to show you the SCS course options that VIVA has for those of you who are interested in taking a full course. And there are good reasons to consider taking a course. So this is obviously the last exam, the last one you do. So, you know, you don't want to be getting stuck at this point. It's very much in your interest, obviously, to get through this as quickly as possible, and to do the exam as well as you can, so that you're not repeating. And undoubtedly, if you take a course, as opposed to going at yourself, if you take a course, it's going to increase the probability that you pass this first time. Okay, that's just that's pretty obvious. The other thing is that, you know, taking a course is just more enjoyable. Maybe enjoyable is the wrong word, but less painful might be the better expression. Going it alone is tough. I think all CIMA students at some point have tried to do it themselves, and it can be long and drawn out and not very interesting. It's much more interesting to be involved in a course with other students, because you can learn a lot from them, and obviously to have a very knowledgeable tutor as well is huge. So good reasons to take a course. As for VIVA Financial Tuition, we're one of a number of tuition providers that cover the SCS. I'm biased, but I think we have an excellent SCS offering. So the other thing is that we have really good price points. So very, very competitive on price compared to other tuition providers. I'm going to walk you through now the makeup of the SCS course for May 22. So I'm just going to share my screen. So just bear with me. Here we go. You can see that, Laura?
Yes, I can see that.
Great. So this link I will send out afterwards, but it is the course page for the SCS for May, August 22. So this first session, as I said, is about 2 hours long, but it is 2 hours of about 50 plus hours total for course content for our SCS. Okay, so the SCS includes 5 mock exams based on the current Prescene with model solutions. Depending on the course option you go for, and I'll talk about the different options in a minute, there would be marking included for all 5 of those mocks if you take the elite course option, which is our most complete SCS course option. There are many live webinars like the one we were doing today. There are live workshops with Laura, which are very, very exam focused sessions, very interactive. So a lot of back and forth between tutor and students. And there's a lot of on-demand content, recorded content that is already at vivatuition.com, and we'll be adding more as we go through this course. If you take the elite course as well, you get a lot of contact time with Laura. So you have access to her on a private community, which I will show you in a minute. And that's really, really useful too. So 52 hours precisely of course content. And we've got the syllabus here, so you can look through this in your own time, but this is how it roughly breaks down. We suggest some pre-course work, so there's still time to do that, where we've got recordings on the website, reviewing the main theories from E3, F3, P3, so you get to refresh your knowledge on those subjects. We've got a series of videos on preparing for the case. So how do you use the Prescene well? How do you apply theory properly? What your role is as a senior manager. We've got a series of videos on the exam day itself. So what's your approach on the day of the exam? How do you win easy marks? What are the obvious errors to avoid? What is the marker actually looking for? We've got an introduction to the SCS session. So that was a live session actually that we did last week with Hugh Martin, the Director of Content at VIVA. So that recording will go up on the website in the next couple of days, and I encourage you to review that. And then we've got 6 weeks of content, a mix of live and recorded content. Everything that is done live is also recorded and put up on the website after. So week 1, first session is today. Okay, so this free Prescene analysis part 1. Everything else that follows will be only available to students who actually purchase a course with VIVA. Okay, so if you're an all access member already, you'll have access to all of this, or at least most of it. If you're already an elite course student, you will access everything here. And if you've not purchased a course, then you would not be able to access anything here except today's session. Okay, so tomorrow, Laura is going to be covering an overview of the real life industries. That session will be 1 hour. Then on Monday, she's going to be covering the second half of the Prescene, where she'll be discussing the financial statements in detail and the articles at the end of the Prescene and some of the other parts of the second half of the Prescene. And these last 2 parts of week 1 are for elite course students only, okay? So there is an office hours session with Laura, which is a very informal way to discuss your concerns about the case with Laura. And then there is an elite course workshop at the end of this first week, okay? So April 16th, that would be, well, it's next Saturday, okay? So this would be a detailed overview of the exam, the marking process, so really useful for getting an overview of what the examiner is looking for and what the exam looks like, okay? Into week 2 then, and you'll see the mock exam start. So this is the first of 5 mocks, and we encourage you to start taking mocks early on, even if you don't feel ready, and for sure you will not feel ready. But the idea is that you start early, that you make a good effort at the mocks, and that you make your mistakes in the mock exams and not on the day of the mock, not on the day of the real exam, okay? So if you're doing the elite course option, you'll have marking included, so you're going to get a lot of feedback on each mock attempt, your strengths, your weaknesses, what you could be doing better, etc. And at the end of this week, in another live workshop session with Laura, elite course only, you will carry out a review of this first mock. So Laura will walk you through the questions and answers in detail. So really, really useful. There's an open Q&A session on April 21st in week 2 as well. So this is an informal 1 hour session just to discuss any concerns or doubts you're having at this or at an early stage with Laura. Into week 3 then, and it's onto the applied webinars. Okay, so these are really useful. They're take the main theories from E3, F3, and P3. So the top 3-4 theories as they relate to this case. So Laura reminds you of what they actually involve, those theories. So a review of those and where they're coming up in the case, where they're coming up in the Prescene, why they're relevant. Then you'll look at some potential questions that come up based on these theories and how you could actually answer them. Really useful sessions. You're expected to take mock 2 in week 3, and then at the end of the week, there is a mock exam 2 debrief or review session with Laura. Okay, 2 hours of that. Into week 4, and it's more of the same. Okay, so mock exam 3, you should be getting good at your answers now. You've got a key issue session then, live webinar with Laura, covering the top 10 issues from the entire case. And at the end of the week, then there is the 3rd mock exam debrief. Week 5, you've got the 2nd office hours session with Laura, an elite course only element again. So this is again is just an informal way to address your concerns with Laura. Mock exam 4, you should be getting really good now at your answers. And there is a mock exam for workshop debrief as well with Laura at the end of that week. Final week then, there's one last webinar, an end of course check and question and answer, clarify your last minute doubts with Laura, your last mock attempt, and then there's finally a live workshop with Laura to wrap things up. Final recommendations ahead of the exam question practice. So it's a really comprehensive course, okay? Really, really good course, we think. And you can go through the other parts here in your own time. Laura is a fantastic tutor. Our students absolutely love her, and we love working with her. You can ask Laura, we're always pestering her to do more with us. So you're in great hands there. She's been our SCS tutor for a while, and we hope she is our SCS tutor for a long time. So let me see, something else to mention. Yeah, okay, important. This VIVA was one of only 6 tuition providers in 2020 to receive the very prestigious CIMA Global Pass Rate Excellence Award, which means that students coming in our courses were exceeding the average pass rates worldwide. So we were one of only 6 to achieve that award. Okay, so
the world #1, Thomas.
So we did. Oh, I forgot to mention that,
How
Laura.
could you forget?
Yes, very important.
I know.
Thank you. In the last, I think it was in February. Maybe it was
November.
It was November. It was November. Yeah, it was November.
Our February guys are still waiting.
Yeah, we had the world #1 for the SCS. So that was fantastic for that student, and fantastic. We were really, really proud of her, and really happy with that. Okay, so the course purchase options then, you know, you've got 2, I think, ideal options. There's a third option as well, which I think is less good maybe for strategic students, because it's probably our best seller. It's the CIMA All Access Pass, okay, which is our best value offering. But what it does is it gives you access to all of our standard courses from the operational level all the way through. But because you're an SCS student at this stage, it might not be the best option, because you may not care much about unlocking the management and operational level. However, it's a good option if you want to unlock the E3, P3, and F3 courses. Maybe you want to go back and review some of that stuff in detail. So this is our CIMA All Access Pass. It's £399 for 1 year of access to everything, all of the standard courses. It's a really good value option. You may be more interested in these. So this is the SCS standard course, okay? So this is our basic SCS course. It includes plenty, but not everything, okay? And this SCS standard course is what you would unlock as part of the All Access package. You would unlock all of the other standard courses that we have. So what's included in the standard course? You get live webinar sessions. So that is the Prescene analysis parts 1 and 2, the industry analysis, the E3, F3, and P3 applied sessions, and the key issues. Okay, so you get those webinars and you get the recordings. You do not get, though, the 12 hours of workshop sessions that Laura does, the interactive sessions, with the mock debriefs and that kind of stuff. You don't get the office hour sessions. You don't get marking. Okay, so they're big things. So that's the big difference really between the standard course and the elite course. So you might be looking at the prices and thinking, well, you know, there's a big difference here between the prices, and there is. But the reason is because the elite course is the most comprehensive course that we have. And we're hopeful that it is the most comprehensive SCS course of its kind on the market. The price point, we have benchmarked it against other tuition providers, and what we typically see for this kind of course, the elite course, they typically run in excess of £1,000. So you'll see that the normal price for this course, the SCS Elite course, is $699, one-time payment. But what we're going to do for attendees of this webinar is we're going to offer this for $599 total price. And the other thing we're going to do is we're going to allow you to spread your payments out in installments, okay? So a number of students have asked me about this recently, and I think it's a fair way to go. So the way you can book your place in the SCS Elite course is by paying a £99 deposit now, and that will guarantee your place in the course. And then in 1 month's time, you start paying your installments. So we're reducing the price to $599. So that means you pay the £99 to join the course. And that means you have a balance left of £500. In 1 month time, then you start paying off in £100 installments over 5 months, the remainder of the fee. So you pay £99 today. In 1 month, you would pay £100. In 2 months, you would pay another £100. In 3 months, you would pay another £100, and so on until the $599 is paid. So that allows you to spread the price out. Now, the other thing to mention is that there is essentially a pass guarantee in place here, because if you purchase the SCS Elite course for May, if you fail in May, and we don't think you should, but just in case, you have the reassurance that you can repeat the SCS Elite course in August, okay? So it's the same Prescene in August, and you can sit it again and go through the Elite course again, okay? So you have that reassurance in place. So it depends on what you're looking for. If you're quite confident that you're going to pass the exam, the SCS standard course is a good option. If you have had maybe difficulty in the past, maybe you failed before, or if you're really ambitious about doing very well in the exam, the SCS Elite course is the better option, okay? So there's something there, I think, for everyone. And then alternatively, if you're interested in the all access pass and unlocking everything, maybe you want to go back and look at E3, P3, and F3 in a little bit more detail, the all access is a good option. That's normally $399, but we're going to reduce that to $299 for the next 48 hours. Okay, so if you're interested in availing of that, then you can do so. The other thing to mention, and I don't think it's actually mentioned here, and we should mention it here, is with the Elite course, is that you get all access bundled in as part of the Elite course until the 31st of August. So you would get the SCS Elite course, but you would be able to unlock these other standard courses for E3, F3, P3, and the other subjects there. Okay, so that's worth mentioning. So
I think as well, Thomas, we also keep the Elite course, is it to about 20? So it's a relatively small group. And as you say, that means that they're very participative and that, I can make sure everybody's individual questions, queries, advice is dealt with as well.
We intentionally do that. Thanks, Laura. I forgot that. Yeah, we intentionally keep the group size small with the Elite course because everyone then gets a lot of attention, okay? And it just works out better. It's a more intimate group setting and the sessions are more interactive, etc. So if you do want to place an Elite course, and this will sound like just this will sound like marketing speak, but act now, okay? Do, because the places will fill up, okay? So what I'll do is I'll pop the links into the chat box for the different purchase options for those of you who are interested in purchasing a course. Let me see. There's one other thing, So if you're already an all access member, and I know that some of you will be, you get a further reduction, okay? So if you're an all access member already, the Elite course is only $499, okay? And again, you can spread the payments out. So you'd be £99 today, and the remaining $400 will be paid in 100 installments over 4 months, okay? So that's important to mention too. So if you're an all access member, it's just $499. If you are not an all access member, it is $599. Both, I think, represent very, very good value, especially when you consider the installments. And if you go out and compare this course to other courses out there, they're typically much higher prices. Okay, have a look around the website, read up on the testimonials. Our students really seem to like what we do, and we're really happy with that. There's an FAQ section here as well. And there's one other thing I wanted to mention is we have a community. So this is something that's brand new. We've just launched it. We're really happy with the tool, and it's just a place for students to come outside of the formal sessions and outside of the course area on the website. It's a place to come to discuss the case in more detail with students and with your tutor. So important to mention here that, again, if you're participating in the Elite course, you're going to unlock parts of the community that give you access to Laura, okay? And there's going to be a lot of interaction with Laura on the discussion panels there. If you're not an Elite course student, you would get access to to a student discussion area where students discuss the case amongst themselves. But it's a really great way, I think, to consolidate your learning. And the more you put into this, the more you will get out of it. So come along with an attitude to contribute on the community and to raise questions, doubts, to comment on things. And it's very intuitive to use. It's very much like a Facebook group or something where you've got posts and comments and likes and things like that. So the SCS community is not active yet because we're just starting today. But the OCS community is active, for example. You can see that people have been on there commenting on the case, making recommendations, etc. You can see the different webinars that are coming up and register for the webinars there. You've got, as I said, if you're an elite course student, you've got your tutor on there posting useful articles and interesting links and raising questions and resolving doubts, etc. So it's a great way, as I said, to go beyond the classes, go beyond the mocks, and it really could make the difference in terms of passes and fails. So you'll get a link as soon as you purchase your course. Automatically, there's going to be a link sent out to you to join the community. And it depends on what you purchase. If you purchase the All Access membership or the standard SCS course, you will get access to the student discussion and the live webinar sessions that are coming up. Okay. If you're an elite course member, you get access to all of that, but you also get access to the tutor thoughts section and all of the live workshops and live office hour events with Laura. Okay. So I hope that's clear. And if it's not, please don't bother Laura with any questions you have about course pricing or administrative stuff like that. You can send all of that my way, okay? And the way you can do that is either in the chat box now. I'll be present for the first 30 minutes or so, or you can email us at info@vivatuition.com. If it's anything related to the case or the content of theory, that's all for Laura. So I hope all of that's clear. And as I said, I'll pop a few things into the chat box and I'll send an email after the session as well with all of this detail. And please, if you have any doubts whatsoever, send them to info@vivatuition.com and a member of the team will get right back to you. Okay. So that's me done. I've gone on too long, probably. Sorry about that.
No, don't worry, we can cope. What I plan to do now is share my screen. As Thomas said, he'll be around for 30 minutes or so, because we've already seen quite a lot of Q&A and chat come in about things. What I'm going to do is, whilst I'm actually going through the pre-scene, I'm going to bob my camera off, but partway through, I'll put it on just so that we can have a little chat. I can ask any questions. And then at the end, again, I'll try to stick to time and around 1 o'clock UK time for that. But I will then stay on to answer any chat. And again, I can bob my camera on for that part as well. So I will now share my screen. You can give me the A-OK, Thomas, that we can see the right screen. So hopefully you can now see the pre-scene.
Yep, I see that, Laura.
Excellent. So I shall just turn my camera off and then we can crack on with the debrief of the pre-scene. Okay, so this is our overview of the May and August 2022 CIMA SCS pre-scene. And this is going to be based on the fictional company of Snackwheel. And Snackwheel is based in the fictional country of Wistaria. Now, I'm sure you've already had a wee look and you know that Snackwheel makes home deliveries of fast food ordered by consumers via an app or website. So our real world alternatives or analogous companies that we're thinking of here are things like Deliveroo, Uber Eats, Just Eat, DoorDash. There's different players that dominate in different jurisdictions, and I'm presuming you all know which is the most dominant player or players where you are. So on the front, just to cover this off, we have a COVID-19 statement, and we've seen this on the last couple of SCS pre-scenes. And I think it's quite important and it's helpful that they clarify this for us. Essentially, what they're saying is generally you can assume that we are in a COVID-free world when you're looking at the pre-scene. However, These exams are human marked, and where you do reference the pandemic and potentially the impact of that, again, you will be awarded marks for valid arguments. So what you will see is sometimes there's a natural fit to mention it perhaps as a, an opportunity or something in the past, especially with home deliveries that they have benefited. But generally speaking, we ignore the impact of the pandemic. So what would I like you to get out of this Prescene overview? Well, clearly, I want you to have a good understanding of the information that is in here, and also how you are going to use this information on exam day. A sound knowledge of the Prescene is absolutely essential at strategic case study. That's one of the differences that I see between operational case study and management case study and strategic. The Prescene becomes so much more important. So we really have to go through it. And I think another thing that I would like you to get from this Prescene is hopefully you'll be able to prepare a little bit of a to-do list. So perhaps some technical areas that you want to brush up on, or areas that you would like to read up on and research in the industry. So I'll be referencing ideas as we go through, maybe ideas to have a look at, or give you some additional industry information. And if that sparks your interest, you might decide to go ahead and research a little bit more of that. So the next page here, we have the contents today. In this first webinar, I think we will probably get up to having a look at Snack Wheel's couriers, thereafter a subsequent overview on the rest of it. So we have our first introductory paragraphs here, and it's very easy to skip over these without realizing how much information is here already. So Snack Wheel is a quoted company. So let's pause and think what that means for us. As a quoted company, we will have greater access to capital. So Snack Wheel will be able to raise equity finance more easily as it is quoted, and also generally will have more access to debt finance as well. That might come through its reputation and its status as a quoted business. But on the other side of things, there are some drawbacks here that we have flagged for you for being a quoted company. Undoubtedly, there is more pressure from shareholders. And one of the key themes in strategic case study exams that you need to be ready for is corporate governance. So what do our shareholders and institutional shareholders expect from the board of directors? That's going to be a key theme. We see it tested time and time again. And as well as that, as a listed company with that higher profile, you will get more pressure from the wider public as well. So things like corporate social responsibility or ESG issues, environmental, social, and governance issues, we really do need to have a good understanding of those for our specific company and our specific industry. And I will pick up on those themes throughout the Prescene debrief. As well, we can have increased compliance. There's a lot more regulatory compliance, such as corporate governance, for quoted companies. So we need to keep an eye on that. Now, the main business of Snack Wheel, as I said, we're going to facilitate home deliveries on behalf of fast food companies across its home country being Wistaria. So we've set out some real world examples for you here. I would encourage you to have a little look at those. Perhaps you're a customer already, and that is actually counts as strategic case study research this time as well. Now, when we see here that it's in the home country, this makes me think of a potential question that could come up on exam day. So perhaps Snack Wheel is going to look at international expansion. So there might be an opportunity to expand beyond Wistaria. And some of the players, such as Uber Eats and Deliveroo, we know are in multiple jurisdictions. Consumers can order food by app or through a website. Now, what this says to me is that if we are going to expand overseas, so beyond our home country, having that infrastructure of connectivity is absolutely key. So you might remember from E3, you've looked at things like Porter's Diamond to help you assess if a jurisdiction is going to be appropriate for your business. And definitely there, I would be looking at those advanced factor conditions of the infrastructure for Wi-Fi, Wi-Fi connectivity and also for mobile data. We will see as we move through the Prescene why that is just essential for this company. So let's have a little bit of a look at you and what role you are now adopting in the case study. So in all the tasks that we have at Strategic Case Study, you're taking on the role of a senior management in the finance function. So there is a real step up from the operational and the management level. And the things that will be expected of you as a senior manager, we have listed some of those here. For me, it means that you're going to be looking at more complex issues that affect not only the short term, but the longer term, very much focusing on risk management, both upside risk in spotting opportunities and managing and mitigating downside risk. To do this and to take on this role, you're going to have a really detailed knowledge of your company. The examiner is expecting you to really know everything within this Prescene that we are told about SnackWheel. So if you put something in your answer that contradicts information in the Prescene, it's really not going to look good, and there's a danger that your answer is just going to not fit the company. So you need to know everything about the company in this Prescene. Hand in hand with that, you really need to have a good industry knowledge. And as we'll see, the examiner provides us with quite a bit of industry information in the Prescene, and I would supplement that with a little bit of your own reading and research. Another key skill for me that you are now a senior manager is that your communication is very clear and concise. So when you're answering on exam day, we need you to prioritize the issues. Yeah. So at that strategic level and reporting directly to the board, you need to quickly analyze the unseen information. You need to understand the impact or the factors that we need to consider. And very importantly, prioritize those, which ones are most important for the board. And my quick sort of hack to help with that is really have a look at the mission and values that come later on in the Prescene, because anything that is, aligned to the mission and values can be more important and prioritize it. And another top tip for prioritizing is look at the principal risk disclosure. When we come to the principal risks, it is probably the page that I look at the most in the Prescene, absolutely essential, because if it's a principal risk and anything that we're looking at impacts on those principal risks, then obviously it is a key issue for the board, and they will want you to know that and prioritize those issues. So really a step up in your skills here. And as I said, SnackWheel is based in Wistaria, and Wistaria is a developed country. So what does that mean for us? As you see here, a developed country would imply that our local population has, a reasonable degree of wealth, and with a reasonable degree of wealth brings disposable income. And why is that important for SnackWheel? Essentially, fast food, the convenience of fast food is a luxury, so it's a discretionary spend. And if we're looking at fast food delivered to a location of our choice, normally the home, again, that is a luxury and a discretionary spend. So the home market of Wistaria has enabled SnackWheel to grow as it is developed. We're also told here that it has an active and well-regulated stock exchange. How do we use this information on exam day? Well, think to F3. This, under the efficient market hypothesis theory, tells me that we are likely to have a semi-strong market. So the share price, and we will look at share price later on in the Prescene, will react to information that is released in the market. And oftentimes that is tested within strategic case study as well. So the currency that we were working in is the W dollar, and very standard for strategic case study Prescenes. Accounts are prepared under IFRS. Okay, so as I said, doesn't look like there's a lot of information there, but already there are things that we can use in our analysis. Now, the next pages, we're going to move on and look at the industry. Now, I know sometimes we are chomping at the bit to jump in and find out about SnackWheel in more detail, but do not underestimate the next couple of pages on the industry focus. So why is this important? The first thing is it will help you understand the context of the tasks given on exam day. So that is extremely important. I am always telling students, once you've read the task, just pause and think. You really need to make sure you understand the context and what is being asked. And the industry information provided undoubtedly helps with that. The second reason why we need to pay attention to these industry pages is it significantly improves your answers. For a start, it can give you ideas and suggestions for what to include in your answers. And very importantly, it shows the examiner that you have a sound knowledge of the industry. So I would say at the very minimum, the next couple of pages in industry detail is the minimum industry knowledge that the examiner is expecting for you to apply in your answer. Now, there's three main areas we're going to look at. We'll have a little look at the fast food industry. We'll have a little look at some information on Wistaria, and then we'll finish off the industry pages by having a little look at home delivery in more detail. So we're starting off by looking at the fast food industry. Now, as a senior manager within the finance function in Snackwheel, why do you need to know about the fast food industry? You must understand this because our fast food industry restaurant partners are going to be key stakeholders in Snackwheel. Our success depends on having partners in the fast food industry to work with. So they're key stakeholders and it's absolutely essential. You need to understand how their business works so that you can come up with ideas, if necessary, of how Snackwheel can add value to their businesses. And also, I think more importantly, so you're able to spot opportunities for growth for Snackwheel, and also that you will have a good understanding of any potential risks of operating with some of these fast food industry partners and how you might mitigate those risks. So it's really important to consider that. Now, the first thing we're going to look at is how the fast food industry operates to start off with. Very much the theme that we see through this is its critical success factors of speed and being able to prepare food on demand. Yeah, so we're seeing speed, convenience, food on demand. And I would say these are very much threshold competencies that everyone in the fast food industry needs to have. So these pages take us through really how that is delivered, so how their operational model delivers that speed and convenience. So the first way they do that is by selecting menus that are very quick to prepare. So the choice of food enables us to satisfy on demand. So you can see reference to batch cooking here, keeping food hot under heat lamps, and batches remain sellable for about 10 minutes at a time. So that is essential. We have another example down here of, again, selecting menus that are quick to prepare. And the photograph here is of a pizza, so we can have pre-prepared bases, and then it is quite quick to put the sauce on top and then select toppings that are all, again, pre-prepared. And clearly with pizza toppings, we can customize those to whatever the customer would like. Okay, so batch cooking, things that can be kept hot, designing our menu to fit with that, quick preparation. Also, the fast food restaurants themselves and how these are designed help deliver those critical success factors of speed and convenience. So typically you have quite wide counters and they're designed to serve customers and collect payments and deliver the food as quickly as possible. Also, if we look more at the locations, it said here, seating areas are designed so that they're generally not that comfortable, not places where you want to linger. That encourages customers to move on, and then you're able to turn your tables more quickly and serve more customers. So you don't want to have people slowing things up by sitting there too long. It's quite interesting once, actually, I read an article years ago about, coffee chains. And actually, the fact that they had made their seating areas too comfortable, and that was impacting on their margins margins. So they had people, buying their coffees and then just sitting there, for perhaps over an hour. So we have the opposite here in fast food restaurants. Now, the menu design we've already looked at to say that it has to be able to prepare quickly and keep warm. But here it goes further than that in terms of the menu design. So the food is designed so customers can actually eat it really quickly. So we tend to see a lot of sauces in food, maybe a lot of condiments in burgers, for example, and very little fiber, again, making it very easy to consume. We're told that bread used in sandwiches and burger buns is very light and airy, again, quick to consume. And some of the efficiencies in doing this is delivered through disposable containers that we see here. So there's a minimal need for staff really to collect and wash any dirty dishes. A lot of areas, as you know, will have self-service and self-clear out. Now, why is this important to Snackwheel, this industry information? We, as you will see, want to deliver food to customers in as quick a time as possible. So having that fast food and an understanding of how that is delivered will ensure, or hopefully ensure, customer satisfaction. And as I said before, we really need to understand these industry partners so that we can work with them. And perhaps a downside or upside risk is that our brand and reputation is going to be very much tied in with those. Before we move on and look at the customer perspective, another thing that I would like to talk about here, now it's noted in some of the notes here, is perhaps some of the dangers or risks with this model. The food, yes, is designed to be quick to prepare, quick to consume, but certainly doesn't seem to be designed with health in mind. And therefore, I think there's a potential risk from corporate social responsibility or the social aspects, perhaps within a PESTEL analysis, that consumers or governments potentially are going to require more healthy foods. That could be an opportunity for these fast food partners. We have seen, for example, the rise in vegan alternatives. So, for example, there's the McPlant burger now in McDonald's. I'm sure there's many more examples. Another thing to note in the fast food industry, which again I think is relevant for Snackwheel, in April 22 in the UK, it became mandatory for restaurants, cafes, and fast food outlets that had more than 250 employees to publish the calories on all items of their menu. And I think it's a good example of government intervention that is going to have an impact on the industry. And is that going to change consumer choice? So there's two ways it could impact on these partners. It may be that people or fewer people decide to have fast food, or it may be that they change their food orders. And obviously then our fast food partners would need to react accordingly. And another thing, going with the social side of things and an environmental side of things, is here in the picture, we have disposable packaging. And we can see here, we have some plastic lids. There have been a lot more pressure, sometimes governmental pressure, sometimes social pressure from consumers to become more environmentally friendly and reduce waste. So an example there would be the reduction in plastic straws, more recycling in there. And for example, recently, when ordering some takeout food on one of these platforms, there was a little message to say that no plastic cutlery would be provided and explaining why. So there are things that we're seeing, and if these are our key stakeholders, we should be aware of what goes on within their market. So moving on to the customer perspective, let's have a little look at fast food customers. Again, here we are seeing the themes of speed and convenience, and there's also reference to price point generally fast food outlets are on the lower end of pricing for restaurant food. And again, think about things that we've looked at in that operational model that really deliver those efficiencies. So minimal staff, serving customers as quickly as possible so that we can serve more customers and all that side of things. And there's some sort of reiteration here of the design of the fast food to make it easy to eat, etc. It also tells us that people have fast food at different points in the day. So, for example, referencing here lunch during the working week, breakfast on the way to work, and obviously then evening meals as well. So we get an idea of what consumers want. Later on in this Prescene, we're going to have more detail on Westarian consumers. And generally, we're seeing the same trends worldwide. You will see that the younger consumers are going to be a key focus for this Prescene. So we have some market data up here of 18 to 35-year-olds. Recent UK study showed that 38% of 18 to 24-year-olds visited quick service restaurants a few times per month. I was actually quite surprised at that. I thought it would be higher. And again, from a consumer point of view, I've already mentioned this. Think about what is going to drive behavior going forward. Yes, they want speed and convenience, but are we going to see more of a focus on health, maybe more of a focus on waste, and for example, carbon footprint? So again, I see changes in the market with that. So we need to be prepared for those coming up in some of the unseen information. So now we're going to move on and look at some industry players. This is very important when we think of the concept of stakeholders from E3. Now, clearly with stakeholders, we cannot please everyone all of the time. So one of the most popular models we use here to prioritize stakeholders would be Mendelow's model. So we rank our stakeholders by power and interest. And I think you should be prepared to have a look at key stakeholders using that model of Snackwheel as you move through the Prescene. One top tip: on exam day, in the unseen information, remember that stakeholders' level of power and interest can vary. So watch out for any differences that might come up in the unseen information. Now, fast food restaurants, as you know, it can be ranging from an independent outlet all the way up to national or global chains. And the global chains in particular have strong brands, focusing on a consistent brand image, often supported by heavy advertising. So when we look at that brand image and think about the implication of that for Snackwheel, well, that could be a significant benefit to us. So if we partner with a strong brand, that will attract consumers to us, but also brings additional risks because that partner is going to want to protect that brand image very, very strongly. And clearly, Snackwheel cannot afford to cause any reputational damage to those brands. The reputational damage is going to work both ways as well. So we can't work with any partners that might cause damage to our brand. Now, oftentimes customers for these global chains, global and national chains, they know the menu really well and they know what they want to order before entering. So sometimes in class, if I'm using McDonald's, let's say as a teaching example, I will always ask students, what's your favorite McDonald's order? Everybody knows instantaneously. And it's quite surprising how people stick with the same thing. So that is important for when we come on to look at Snackwheel for the algorithms. They look at the data about what people order, how frequently they order it, and then that helps design a more efficient system around that. So I think that's very important. Now, we're about to have a little look at different varieties of fast food, and it's important to note here that these can vary by local culture and tastes. Why is this important for us in terms of strategic case study? Well, we know that Snackwheel operates in its home country only. If it was to decide to go beyond West area and maybe make an acquisition or grow overseas, we would have to have an appreciation of different local cultural tastes. Perhaps we would need to seek new restaurant partners to facilitate growth in other jurisdictions. So I think that's a very important point to remember for any international expansion. Now, I would assume the vast majority of us are very aware of different types of fast food. And what this Prescene does is it covers 5 of the most popular types. So we have burger restaurants, so cover various different types of burgers, often accompanied by fries. Real world examples would be McDonald's and Burger King. Pizza restaurants, I think, again, we all understand what that is, and we've looked at how they can be quickly prepared and quickly customized to customers. So real world examples there would be Domino's and Pizza Hut. Sandwich restaurants, perhaps more popular during the day, perhaps more popular with people working. Clearly a variety of sandwiches, generally cold, but the option to have them toasted. So examples there in the real world would be Subway or Quiznos. Chicken restaurants, extremely popular for fast food, and real world examples there would be, let's say, Kentucky Fried Chicken or Popeyes. And then some fast food restaurants, we're seeing, well, certainly in the UK, these are very popular at the moment, bakery chains that might look at different pastries, pasties, sausage rolls, that side of things. And a real world example is Greggs. Again, I'm not too sure how international Greggs is, but it is certainly very popular in the UK. Now, again, think of the types of foods that we've just said there, risk management from a P3 point of view. Will there be pressure either socially or from governments in terms of unhealthy food? So I've already given you the example of some new UK legislation about mandatory calories. What do we think the Westarian government may do? Or if we're looking at expanding internationally, what would the government in those new jurisdictions do? So that might be a key risk for our partners and therefore for SnackWhale as well. Now, accompanying the general, the main thing that these offers would be soft drinks, side dishes and desserts. And again, not really super healthy. So the same points would apply there. Disposable packaging, I've already referenced. So are we going to see a move towards more recyclable packaging, less packaging, or a move away from plastic? And I would say one of the biggest disruptors within fast food and the restaurant industry generally is the rise of vegetarianism and veganism. And we're seeing menus adapting accordingly. Okay, so vegan options such as the McDonald's McPlant burger. Now, that is not controversy free either. You may want to have a look at when, I think it was Burger King, was one of the first plant-based burgers and had a lot of criticism actually from vegans because they were saying you shouldn't go and eat in what is essentially a restaurant that is selling meat products. So again, it's never really an easy issue. So some controversy and pushback and some reputational damage potentially for some of those. Now, before we move on to Westaria and having a look at Westaria, I just want to pause a little moment because I do want to encourage you to think about the restaurant perspective. They are key stakeholders, and I would recommend that you do a little bit of research about the impact of partnering with a home delivery app such as SnackWhale and what the restaurant perspective would be. I was reading an article in the UK's Guardian. It was from April 21, and it was from a small independent restaurateur. And when the pandemic hit, well, Deliveroo was its absolute savior. So it received its tablet from Deliveroo, which we'll talk about in the Prescene coming forward. And the restaurateur was saying that they were very reassured to hear the ping, ping, ping of orders coming in. However, after that initial positive reaction, things changed. They found the commissions that they had to pay to Deliveroo were up to 35% plus VAT, and that squeezed the already tight restaurant margin. So this is something we need to be aware of in our role. What that meant was the restaurant put their prices up, and that actually alienated some loyal customers that they had had for many, many years. Also, the restaurant faced problems if a customer complained because their contract with Deliveroo actually meant that they had a financial penalty. And when they tried to resolve this with Deliveroo, they found it almost impossible to find a human to talk with because the process is highly automated. Yeah, so we do need to get a good understanding of the restaurant point of view, because some of the unseen information we see on exam day might be around a restaurateur or having issues. Okay, so we need to be aware of that as well. Now let's move on and have a look at some Westarian information. So we're going to have a little look at fast food in Westaria, and let's have a look at our customer base in Westaria. And this is super important for you because this is our home market and currently the market in which we operate. So Westarian fast food industry, we're told, generated $172 billion in the year to 31 December 21. And we're told sales come from 55,000 outlets, and they're spread across the country. Now, what is really interesting here is we're seeing growth in the market, and it's grown steadily for a number of years. And we are seeing that in a lot of markets. So we see it in the UK market, the US market, etc. So this is a growth area. Why is that important for Snack Wheel? Well, that provides opportunities for us, and also it makes us potentially more attractive to investors. They are going to want to benefit from that growth as well. So let's have a look at how the Westarian fast food market is broken by revenue. Here we can see that burgers dominate. So I make that circa 40% of fast food by revenue is attributable to burgers. Pizzas are the next most popular, around about 25% there. Sandwiches, I was quite surprised at this actually, are about 15% of the market. So again, perhaps the profile of consumers there are those who are working and buying a sandwich for convenience at lunch. Then we have chicken, round about 12%, and baked goods are round about 8%. So this is your home market. You need to know the proportionate revenue there when you go into your exam. Let's have a look now at our consumers in Westaria. So this is quite interesting. And what we will see here is that generally we are looking at younger consumers. Those are the consumer groups that are eating more fast food and eating it more frequently. So we have some information here, and generally this is the pattern that we see in all jurisdictions. So here we have reference to an industry survey. So this might be some information you want to blend into your answer. So 70% of Westarians aged over 20 eat fast food at least once per week, and 23% eat fast food 3 times or more per week. Here we have a bar chart of the percentage of the population that eats fast food at least once per week. And all, well, not all, but almost all of 20 to 39-year-olds, 88% fit within that. Now, it is less for the middle-aged group and for the 60 plus, but still relatively healthy percentages there. So how could we use this information on exam day? Well, we might have targeted marketing campaigns. So perhaps some segmental marketing. Perhaps we want to market more heavily to the younger groups, and let's think about how we market to those younger groups. So perhaps more through social media and through influencers, and perhaps our marketing spend for more traditional advertising would be in these older age groups. Another thing that I wanted to focus on when I look at this, let's look at these younger consumers. Again, an absolute key stakeholder for Snack Wheel. So we need to understand their perspective. I've encouraged you already to understand the restaurant or the fast food outlet perspective, and it's the same here. I want you to understand younger consumers. Now, from a governmental point of view, perhaps governments are more concerned about unhealthy foods for younger consumers. Maybe they are seen as more vulnerable, or we don't want to, say, as a government, store up health problems for when those younger consumers meet middle age. So perhaps that is a risk to the fast food industry and Snack Wheel. Also, younger consumers, if you look at any research, tend to be more engaged with environmental issues. So perhaps our restaurant partners in Snack Wheel need to be more proactive, shall we say, in terms of the environmental impact. So that might impact food choices. So for example, meat, we know, has a much higher carbon footprint than plant-based alternatives. Let's think about use of plastic and packaging for waste, and also the carbon footprint of the entire meal. I've started to see in some restaurant industries publication or consideration of the entire carbon footprint. So I would encourage you to think about young consumers and their engagement with environmental issues, because again, they are a vital stakeholder for us. Okay, so possibly something to look, and that, we could tie that into our targeted marketing if that was appropriate. Perhaps a way to engage these younger consumers is to show that we are more environmentally friendly. So you'll need to consider ways in which Snack Wheel can do that. Now we're going to look at fast food home deliveries generally. So this is the last area of our industry analysis. And why is this important to us? Well, this is our industry. So you are a senior finance manager working in this industry, so you need to know this inside out. So let's have a look at the phrase home delivery and what we mean by home delivery. So home delivery typically means that the customer will order food and it is delivered to a chosen location. Now, it can be the home address, but it may be a place of employment, perhaps to a hotel, or any other fixed location that is safe and accessible. And as you can see from the note here, this is actually sort of how Deliveroo started. So founder Will Shu wanted takeout meals in London after working long hours. So again, that convenience of having the food delivered to your home. I have had students in class before, face-to-face classes, where they've asked me when the lunch break might be, and that is because they are using these apps to have their favorite meal delivered to wherever they are studying. And certainly I think the most unusual time I've used it, my car broke down once and I had to wait a couple of hours for roadside assistance. Again, I was able to park up somewhere safe and accessible, and I had a pizza delivered to myself while I was waiting on the roadside assistance. So really quite a wide variety of places. What does this mean for Snack Wheel? Perhaps reference to safe location here is in terms of our courier drivers. So with corporate social responsibility in mind, Snack Wheel cannot send courier drivers to unsafe locations. Safety also makes me think about ordering. You know, if you want to order some food late at night, perhaps it is safer, potentially more for younger and female consumers to have that delivered to home as well. So there's quite a few things that we can think about there. This next paragraph gives us a little bit of the history of home delivery. So started by a major burger chain and allowed its customers the convenience to order and pay online and then have food delivered to them. That worked well, and therefore others started to copy it. But when it really took off was with widespread ownership and use of smartphones. So very much technology as a driver for change here if we're thinking about our E3 syllabus. And still the themes that we'll see through here of convenience. This simplifies the process even more and therefore makes it even more convenient. Okay, and we see an uptick in Deliveroo's performance when there was an uptick in smartphone apps. Now, have a wee look here at Snack Wheel. So Snack Wheel created Westaria's first independent home delivery platform. So what does this tell us? If we think about our E pillar, this tells us that Snack Wheel may have a first mover advantage. Maybe its brand is the one that people think of first when they think of a home delivery platform. So that might be a strength of ours that we can we can leverage either when raising finance or looking for new restaurant partners and attracting new consumers as well. There's another term here from E3 that I would like you to be aware of, and that is re-intermediation. So essentially, Snackwheel has put itself as an intermediary between the consumer and the fast food restaurant. So typically in the past, we have seen a lot of removal of intermediaries when organizations have had vertical integration. But this is a really good example of re-intermediation, okay? So what it essentially did to disrupt the market is it looked at the fact that there were a lot of fast food restaurants and cafes with their own delivery services and their own websites, and how it disrupted that. You'll remember from E3, if to make, successful disruption means that something is better. So it's either more convenient or it's cheaper. And what they've gone for here is being more convenient. So you've got that one-stop shop. So you go onto the Snackwheel app, and then you have a range of fast food choices, and you can pay for those and see all of those in the convenience of one single app. So that's how the market disruption has happened. And there's another reference to E3 here, as you will see, reference to ecosystem. So Snackwheel would be classified as a platform provider, okay? Now, it delivers the food by couriers. We will look at that later in the Prescene, because that is a very, very hot topic, something that we need to look at. And essentially, it's a win-win situation here. So they're providing a service that customers find more convenient, but hopefully also helping the restaurant chains increase their sales or have another distribution channel for that. Now, as always, when someone is doing something successfully, then we start to see competitors coming in as well. And we're told that there are two major competitors in West Area. So we have Munchbike, that was launched, that would be 2 years later in 2009, and Truck Bites, again, a further 2 years later in 2011. So let's think about how that might appear on exam day. Let's think about E3 and evaluating strategies with major competitors, as they're described. Snackwheel needs to seriously consider how it is going to compete. How is it going to have a sustainable competitive advantage? And I would see that as two ways that it needs to do that. It's got to attract and retain restaurants, and it has also got to attract and retain consumers. So it's going to have sustainable ways of doing that for both of those groups. So perhaps from a restaurant point of view, what about its fees and its commission that it charges, okay? Or it could differentiate itself through fees it charged to consumers as well, depending on how they do that. Maybe restaurant selection, is it going to differentiate itself with consumers by having the, let's say, widest range of restaurants, or perhaps some exclusive deals? So if it could have an exclusive arrangement with one of West Area's most popular restaurants, again, that might be a source of sustainable competitive advantage. We know that speed and convenience are key within this market, so perhaps the app can make that even better, okay? So we'll keep looking at other ideas as we progress through the Prescene, but that's something to get you started with. This information here about our competitors also makes me think about a different potential exam day question, and that would be, what if Munchbike was to acquire Truck Bite or vice versa? How would that impact on Snackwheel? Is that a risk that the board of directors should be aware of? And if they think it is a risk, what mitigations do they have in place for that? Alternatively, it might be that Snackwheel wants to buy Munchbike or Truck Bite, or potentially they could seek to acquire Snackwheel. So The things I need you to be ready for there is make sure that you're well aware of all your sort of merger and acquisition detail from F3 in terms of valuation, and also from a P3 and E3 point of view in terms of strategic opportunities, but also the risks. So again, that is something, that sort of maybe acquisitive nature or consolidation that we often see in these type of industries. So that is a potential exam day question for me. So what I'm going to do now is just take a little pause. I have popped my camera back on, and obviously, I want to stick to time as much as possible. So I'll just spend about 5 minutes. I'll read as many of the questions as I can, and then I will pop my camera back off again and we will go through it. So hopefully you're finding lots of interesting and useful information to date, and hopefully you've got a list of things that you need to look at. So just going to open my chat box. As I said, if it is anything for Thomas in terms of administrative things for VIVA or payment, then Thomas will either have answered these or it's info@vivatuition.com. So I'm just going to have a wee look through these now. Okay, I can see some familiar names here, which is nice as well. See if I can find anything. Most of these, as you would expect at the initial stages. Thomas has obviously been busy answering most of these. Okay, most of those ones in the chat box are all for Thomas. I'll have a wee look at the Q&A here. Again, there'll be another opportunity at the end. Okay, so I think here's one for me. How do you bridge the gap between someone who is writing CIMA case study for the first time and has not written anything for E3, P3 and F3 before? Is there time to catch up? This is a really excellent question, and it's a question that I get asked a lot. Yes, there is time. We have plenty of time between now and exam day to whip you into shape. Part of my preparation that I like to do with students, yes, there's the technical side of things, and yes, there's the pre-scene in the industry, but I spend an awful lot of time on your written skills and also how you organize your work. You're writing for the board here. It has to be professional, and having good written skills and organizational skills massively helps with timing in the exam. Timing is an issue in this exam, and I would walk you through a way of writing that helps you manage that time. In a nutshell, I think the more clear and concise your writing is, so short sentences, short paragraphs, the use of headings and subheadings massively facilitates not only your own thought process and organization, but I find that is the best written style for exams. So that's how I would practice with you to bridge that gap. It is a skill that takes a little bit of time to develop, but definitely will pay off. If you are not working, let's say you decide not to go for the elite group and that's something you're doing at home, what I would recommend to you there is you can look at the CIMA past paper answers to give you an idea of content, but personally what I would encourage you to do is write in shorter sentences and shorter paragraphs than you'll see in those suggested answers, and also headings and subheadings. It massively helps you say concisely and quickly what you want to say. And also I think that layout helps ensure that you get a range of points which is also essential to success in case study tasks. What I'm always saying to my students there is, yeah, I want you to have a range of ideas, but don't put all your eggs in one basket. And I think, you know, headings massively helps with that. So hopefully that's encouraging. And if you go for the option with VIVA, where you're getting the mocks and the feedback, and also in the workshops, you're going to get all the advice that you need. So it's a good question, and I think it's really encouraging that you're thinking about that up front. That's a good sign from my point of view. So another question here, when do I recommend I should attempt the first mock? Again, an absolutely excellent question. One thing I find with the students on the elite group, no matter how many times I would say to them, is they say, oh, I'm not ready for a mock. I would say you want to do the first mock within the VIVA time scale. So normally, you know, within that sort of end of week 1 to end of week 2. So in the second week following that timetable, the timetable is really well thought out. A lot of effort's gone into that, and you will get a lot from that mock, even if you do it and let's say get what you think is a terrible score, because what it will give to me is it gives me a benchmark of where you are. And I'm very, very much into encouraging my strategic case study students to do what I call a gap analysis. So what's my performance? What is the answer? And so let's come up with, let's say, 3 things that you need to do to improve before the next mock. And again, I would give you advice on how to improve in each one of those areas. So it might be technical knowledge, it might be breaking down the requirement, it might be timing, it might be how you're writing things. So you don't really get to start that gap analysis unless you jump in on the first mock. And generally, the students that follow the timetable and do the mocks, they've got the confidence to have a go, get that personalized feedback and improve so much more quickly. So it's one thing I'm always saying to students, you know, jump in, have a go. Another question here, what is a reasonable score for the first mock? To be honest, that's a tough one. Sometimes students pass, but I have to say, and we say 60% if you're marking it out of 100%, and that would be a pass. Normally, I don't see that. So I have seen students in their first mock, you know, even get as low as 20% sometimes, but then a massive uptick in the second mock. So my advice to you is, don't necessarily focus on the mark in the first mock, focus on the feedback. That is much, much more relevant. Use it as a diagnostic. And also what you get, if you do that first mock to time, you get to experience what a strategic case study exam feels like. And then you get so much more out of the webinars that you subsequently listen to. And if you're in elite, the classes, because you know what I'm talking about. It's not theoretical anymore. So again, I can't stress enough how I think you should just jump in and have a go, and do not be disheartened because very few people will pass the first mock. As Thomas said, you know, the first couple, you're finding your feet, you're using them as learning tools about the exam, about the Prescene, about the industry. But when we get to mock 3, 4, 5, then you're still benefiting from the fact that you just had a go on those other mocks as well. So, which exam sitting do I think is similar to case study if you wanted to look at past papers? Again, another really good question. I would say there was one, I cannot remember the date off the top of my head, though I think it was May 20, and it was with regard to micro mobility. So things like, it was hoverboards, but things like e-scooters or bike rentals. The reason I say that is because the micro-mobility business that we were looking at the time was also heavily reliant on an app and connectivity. And as you'll see as we progress through the Prescene, that is also the situation here. So that's the first one that would spring to mind for that, to give you, especially on the digital strategy and the data side of things, and maybe data controls and internal controls on that side of things as well. Okay, does this mean Snack Wheel and the restaurants share the same customers? Yes, it does. That's an excellent point. So essentially, well, this is one thing we maybe have to look at about consumers, and you might ask yourself the same question. When you decide to have some fast food at home, is your deciding factor the restaurant? And then therefore you'll go to whichever provider delivery service gives it to you, or do you have a preferred delivery app that you use, and then you will choose from their restaurant selection. But in any event, essentially the customer pays for that food, and that provides some revenue and profit for the restaurant, and it also provides revenue and profit for Snack Wheel. So yeah, spot on, excellent point there. What are the key P3 topics that would come up the most? Again, I'm going to be covering these in a later webinar. Again, my other top tip is the Applied series by VIVA is top notch, because not only do we do the theory, it is in an applied way. And I chat you through, normally it's about 4 questions in each one, so it's excellent. But in a nutshell, to answer your question for P3, I would say I want you to be on top of your corporate governance best practice. I want you to make sure that you understand risk management. So that is the process of risk management. So you might want to look at some risk management models, and obviously that overlaps with governance as well. And also, I think internal controls get tested a lot. So where you're asked for an internal control, what I want to see in your answer is a practical policy or procedure that someone could implement to mitigate a risk. And clearly, the situation we have here and this heavy reliance on connectivity, cybersecurity is really, really key for P3 as well. That sounds like a terrible answer that I've just given you, because I've said the whole of the P3 topic, but I find that P3 comes up a lot. I mean, you would normally get a corporate governance or risk management question in every paper. And I would say cybersecurity as well. So maybe internal controls around cybersecurity as well there. Okay, that one's one for Thomas. Answered that. Let me just scoot down here. Okay, that's, I think I've answered most of those there. If you don't find that I've answered your question well enough, again, pop another one in. And what I will do is at the end of the session, I will also cover some of those questions as well. So I will pop my camera off again now, and we will work on with the rest of this pre-scene. So let me just get myself to where we want to be. So we're going to go and have a look now at characteristics of home delivery. So I shall see you again shortly. Okay, so now we are going to look at home delivery platform characteristics. Absolutely essential knowledge for you, because this is our bread and butter at Snack Wheel. This is what we do, so we need to know the process. So here it says that Snack Wheel describe themselves as a platform, because essentially they are a platform that connects the demand from consumers with the supply from restaurants. And later on, you will see in the pre-scene that as well as describing themselves as platforms, they also use the term portals or aggregator portals as well, because they aggregate a number of restaurant choices through their app. So let's have a look at the characteristics now of home delivery platforms. So we're getting the idea of this now. Customers place an order online, maybe through an app or potentially through a website. And here we get reference to advertising. So this could be a key cost for Snack Wheel. So our apps are promoted heavily through advertising, and potentially more so for our younger consumers through social media as well. Now you have a choice as a customer. If you wish to do so, you can create an account, and that would give you the added convenience of storing your payment details. So it would be quicker and easier for you to order what you want and pay. If you don't want to do that, then you can pay online and put in your bank card details each time, or in some cases, you can pay by cash. So let's have a little look from a P3 point of view at these different options. So if you create an account and you store your payment details, well, then this is what we call personal identifiable information. And that is normally heavily protected by data privacy laws. So holding that information exposes Snackwheel to regulatory and legal risks from that point of view. Also, cyber risk, if that sensitive information is stolen, then there could be problems. You may wish to research, one of the examples that I've looked at is Deliveroo had quite a lot of negative press about hackers having stolen, customer account names and passwords, and then making fraudulent orders. And those orders maybe range from anything from, say, a packet of cigarettes all the way through to really large orders of food. Now, the coverage on that was interesting because Deliveroo was saying, it's not us. We hold that information and it is secure. And what was happening, they think in reality, is that either customers themselves were being victims of hacking, let's say through phishing. So their password and email would be stolen by someone who could then use it and make orders. Or it's, it's quoted quite widely that for as little as, say, $6, £5, that pairs of usernames and passwords can be bought on the dark web. And that's why we're always encouraged to use different passwords for different accounts. So as Snackwheel, potentially we face reputational damage, even when it's not us that has released or lost those account details and passwords. So what are we going to do to mitigate that risk? Do we have a responsibility to our customers that register on our app to encourage them to use distinct passwords that they don't use elsewhere? What else could we put in place? I think one of the strongest things is something like two-factor authentication. So I would encourage you to think about controls around cybersecurity and also reputational risk. Another area for controls is the payment by cash. Cash is inherently more risky from a fraud point of view because it can be stolen or even just human error, it can be lost. So I want you to think in advance about what internal controls should Snackwheel put in place with regard to cash payments, okay? And be prepared for that. So let's have a look now. So we've placed our order. And then platforms will allow us a range of different restaurants to decide what we want, okay? And again, look at this, this theme of convenience. So if you had a family group or a group of friends around and everybody wanted something else, well, these portals or aggregator portals enable us to do that. So we can place multiple orders with a single payment and have that delivered. Now, the platform software are key intangible assets that we have here. So the algorithms built into these software, as we will see shortly, are extremely important to the success of this. So they identify which is the most suitable restaurant branch to fulfill the order. They send that information to the restaurant. They use historic data within the algorithms, look at that historic data to estimate delivery times, and it makes sure that there are the right number of couriers to make sure that that food can be collected by the courier and delivered to the customer. So again, this is an area of digital strategy, highly, highly reliant on connectivity as well. And really overall, we're trying to make it as seamless and easy for our consumer as possible. Then I'm sure this is a site that we're all used to seeing. When we look at the couriers in more detail, often they will have, low-powered motorcycles, small cars, sometimes even, a traditional bike, and they have insulated boxes that have some battery-powered heating elements in there to keep the food warm. Now, this is interesting here, and we will look at this in more detail when we talk about Snackwheel. Couriers are required to provide their own vehicles. Now, they are responsible to make sure that they are roadworthy and that they are insured. And I think this is, again, something potentially that could be explored on exam day. Think about P3 and internal controls again. How does the company ensure that couriers only use roadworthy vehicles and that they're insured? Think about the scenario that heaven forbid, there's an accident and someone is hurt, and it is due to the fact that the vehicle is unroadworthy, or there's an accident and someone is hurt and it turns out the driver is not insured, technically, if that responsibility lies with the courier, we could say that Snack Wheel is not liable, but it's more complicated than that. Will people consider us to be liable if we haven't had the proper internal controls in place? Do we have a duty of care to the general public to ensure that our couriers that are probably driving around with the Snack Wheel logo are roadworthy and properly insured? And again, when you see internal controls, very much try to think of practical policies and procedures that could be put in place. That's one thing I see in strategic case study. When a student writes an internal control, it's just not specific enough. So again, try to make it very practical. Overall, platforms aim to ensure that food gets there within 30 to 40 minutes. So again, that sort of convenience and speed thing coming through. Okay, and it says here, if you order from more than one restaurant, then it might be delivered by more than one courier. And I am ashamed to say that that has happened at my house once before. I had a number of couriers at the door at the same time. So that was a bit embarrassing. Doesn't show very healthy eating habits from my point of view. What is the risk here? Is this 30 to 40 minutes something that's absolutely vital? Does it factor into customers' decision making? I would probably say that it does. So what do we do if those delivery times are getting longer and longer? How do we react in order to improve that? And we're going to see some ideas throughout this Prescene that you will be able to use to answer that. Okay. Now we have some more information here on payment options, and largely this is what we have already said before. So typically we have 3 payment options. We know we can create an account and put our debit or credit cards in there. Again, personal identifiable information. We are exposed to more legal and regulatory risk by data protection laws, and also a higher cybersecurity risk. If we don't want to link our cards, then we can input card numbers. And again, a little bit more detail here on cash. So as we said before, some restaurants might permit couriers to accept cash, but this is problematic. It has an increased fraud risk, for example, and we get some detail here. It says there are rarely suitable bases to which cash can be submitted. So that means the courier would collect that cash, and we don't want our couriers driving around with, high cash balances. It makes them, a potential target. So they have to have these bases where they can drop cash off. So also think about the impact that that may have on the speed of delivery and how quickly a courier can turn an order around before they're available for another one. So that might be unpopular for restaurants, for Snack Wheel, and for couriers if it slows the process down as well. Right, let's have a look now at some of the revenue that these platforms earn, because this will tell us where some of the revenue from Snack Wheel is coming from. So the platforms track all of the sales. This is a highly automated process, as we'll look at. So they collect loads and loads of data. So they track all the sales. And what they do is when they have engaged with a restaurant and a customer places an order, then the delivery platform will take an agreed commission from that. So the commissions here we see are typically between 15 and 30%, but you might recall that article that I referred to earlier, that restaurateur was citing commissions of up to 35%. And what I would want to compare these commissions with are the restaurant's margins. So again, this is going to reduce the restaurant's margins, and therefore these platforms are going to have to bear that in mind. Yeah, so they obviously, the platforms want to earn as much money as they can, but their commissions can't be so high that restaurants don't want to work with them, okay? So a source of revenue is commissions. Another source of revenues is from dark kitchens. And this is the first time in the Prescene that we have seen reference to dark kitchens, but we have some more detail here, and then later when we look at Snack Wheel, we'll see more specific detail. So a dark kitchen isn't a restaurant, yeah? So there is no seating. You don't go and have a meal in a dark kitchen. They are solely storage and food preparation facilities. So these are set up and they are rented often to multiple fast food chains. So they are divided up into separate areas and separate kitchens, and then each restaurant or restaurant chain would have its own area. Now, why are these beneficial? Really, it is a very cost-effective way, either if you're a new startup or you're not in a particular location, to establish a presence. So you would solely sell your food through a delivery app. So that would be your distribution channel. Or if you were already established, and you were finding in your restaurants that you were at capacity and perhaps having to turn away orders that were coming in through these home delivery apps, you could have extra capacity in a dark kitchen. Why would that be cost effective? Because you're not having to provide a seating area. So none of the rent that you're paying is being taken up by a seating area. You don't have to decorate the place to create a certain ambience or atmosphere, as we often see in restaurants. And also you don't have any wait staff. We would only have the kitchen staff. So it really is a cost-effective way for a restaurant to be able to increase its capacity and sell more. And also that is a benefit for the platforms such as Snack Wheel, because the more orders the restaurants have, then the higher our commission is. So from dark kitchens, yes, we earn revenue for rent, but we also potentially can earn more commissions. Now, there's a couple of things that we want to think about on the other side of dark kitchens. We've talked about some of the benefits, but you'll see in strategic case study that we always want a well-rounded answer. So where we're looking at opportunities and benefits, we also need to think about the downsides and the risks sometimes. So let's have a look over here. So dark kitchens are often criticized for being cramped and perhaps poor working conditions. Also, they can be associated with sometimes with poor hygiene in the spaces. Do the customers know that the food is coming from a dark kitchen? We have to put ourselves in the customer's shoes to think, is that really relevant? Would you mind if your food was coming from a dark kitchen as opposed to the restaurant? The key thing is, if you are renting space in a dark kitchen, it's still your menu, it is still your trained staff. So to all intents and purposes, it should taste the same and be of the same quality level, but perhaps there's maybe a lack of transparency with the customers in using a dark kitchen. And then another point that's interesting over here is the dark kitchens might be set up in areas that are price controlled. And again, if you want to have a look at DoorDash, which is another platform, their Q4 earnings report highlighted that they worked in or had dark kitchens in 73 price controlled areas. So if that price control was changed and the rent significantly went up, what would be the impact therefore on our restaurant partners, and then the knock-on effect on Snack Wheel as well? Would we put the rent up? Would we absorb some of that cost ourselves? And these are some of the strategic decisions that you might have to make. So this is interesting down here. Platforms don't necessarily need a lot of infrastructure to move into a new location. So that might be a new town or a new city. Reasons for that, again, it's all done remotely. Okay, so couriers operate remotely, little or no direct supervision. They're controlled by means of apps, etc. And the majority of the infrastructure is the restaurants themselves. So if they're already there, provided we have some connectivity and a pool of couriers, then they can join our platform and we can operate in that area. So perhaps if Snack Wheel is considering moving into new areas within West Area, then we don't really have very many barriers there and expansion should be straightforward. Now, we do pick up on this point later in the Prescene as well, but have a look at this, and I want you to think about this. Couriers have little or no direct supervision. What does this mean for Snack Wheel? Well, it could mean that we have reduced costs. You know, we don't have anyone necessarily supervising them. So reduced costs there, more flexible, less fixed cost base. But on the other side, does that significantly increase our reputational risk? The couriers are the ones that are customer facing. They are the ones that deliver the food to the customers. And are they doing it in a way that is consistent with Snackwheel's values and the standard of service that we would want to see? A real world example there that I would encourage you to have a look at is the platform Just Eat. Now, I think it might have been about 4 years ago, but if you Google Just Eat courier and let's say unwanted messages to female customer, then you will see that a courier used some of the information that they were privy to, in other words, a customer's mobile phone number, to send unwanted text messages to a customer after the food delivery had been made. Now, that in itself is interesting, and you would have to think about what internal controls you would put in place to prevent that in the first place. Also, what is interesting when you read about that is Just Eat's response to the customer, and you know, overall it was seen to be extremely poor customer service. I think they initially offered her a £5 off voucher when she complained about being harassed, and you can imagine the negative reputational impact that that have. So that's an example that you might want to have a look at, and I am sure that there are more. Now we are moving on to an extremely hot topic here. This is so topical, and I'm not a betting person, but I am pretty much sure that this is going to come up on exam day. We need to understand the difference between employed couriers and basically freelance couriers, independent contractors. There is so many issues around this, and it is a complex area and it is high risk, that I think it is going to be a key issue for Snackwheel. So let's have a look at the difference between them and some of the benefits and risks that go with each type. So let's look at employees first. So employees may be full-time or part-time, and normally where a courier is employed, it is where they are working in a city centre, where we have a large number of office workers and quite predictable time. So let's say deliveries around lunch. We want to have employees where demand is more steady and where demand is more predictable, because when we have employees, we increase our fixed cost base, yeah, and that brings a higher risk that we won't cover those fixed costs and we will make a loss. So very city centre dominated around lunch times, and we would look at residential areas, but there would have to be large enough numbers to support that. Why do employees increase our fixed cost base? Well, clearly we pay them a salary in the first place. That's, they get the salary whether there are 20 deliveries in a day or 0 deliveries in a day. But as well as that, employees have various rights and protections, and that comes with an expense as well. So under employment law in most jurisdictions, an employee will be entitled to holiday pay and pension contributions as well. And typically in most jurisdictions, if you're employed, the employer has to pay social security taxes for that employee as well. So the example in the UK would be national insurance contributions. Okay, so the downside is the increased fixed cost, but the upside would be maybe a more reliable and consistent workforce. So we can train and we have more control over our employees as well. So perhaps that helps mitigate reputational risk or us not having a supply of couriers. So it's a balance, and you need to understand the balance. Okay, let's compare that with our independent contractors. And you might have heard the term gig workers. We tend to associate independent contractors and call them gig workers. So most fast food couriers are independent contractors, and we will see the statistics for that for Snackwheel later on. They are paid, instead of a salary, a set rate per delivery. Okay, so the upside there for Snackwheel is that would be a variable cost. We only pay our couriers when there are deliveries to be made. So if it's a particularly quiet night or a quiet week, then we're not incurring the cost of that. Contractors download an app from their smartphones, and that enables the platform software to communicate instructions, whether to go and collect an order. And as we'll see later on, the platform software or algorithms balances out with demand the number of couriers that it will call upon at any one time. Contractors also use the app to say when they are available for work. Now, the platform issues contractors with uniforms and branded insulated boxes. The reason that that's highlighted is because that's really important. So although they're an independent contractor, to all intents and purposes, they appear as if they are employees. They have, in Snackwheel's case, the Snackwheel branding on them as well. Now, there is so much real world information here that I would encourage you to look at. And the controversy comes really because, as we say here, if you're an independent contractor, you're not entitled to the protections of employment laws such as minimum wage, sick pay, holiday pay, and a huge difference is typically you don't have to pay social security costs, or UK national insurance is an example of that, on independent contractors. So for the platforms, not only is it more cost effective as a variable cost, overall it is cheaper as well to employ contractors. And what I want you to consider is if the legislation changed and you had to, let's say, make social security contributions or pay holiday pay, etc., what would that do to Snackwheel's margins? I would advise you to do a little bit of research on this. So you might want to look at their Uber case. Now, I'm not just talking about Uber Eats, it was mainly Uber drivers, but the principle is the same. So there have been a number of cases. So on the previous page, we reference California has recently passed legislation which will force companies like Snackwheel to reassess contractors. And also in the UK, and I've seen this in some other jurisdictions as well, a number of Uber drivers took Uber to court, and they have not gone for full employment status, but a bit of a hybrid worker status that gives them some more rights. And again, very much changes the margins of Uber as well. So it exposes us to other risks, reputational risks that we've talked about, but also I think there's potentially this ticking time bomb of maybe the Westarian government changing the legislation, or if we look at international expansion, that might be something that would come up. Now, as well as that side, it brings other risks to do with our ESG, environmental, social, and governance issues. Do we owe independent contractors a duty of care in any event? The contentious issues typically around how much they're paid. Couriers are not particularly well paid, whether they're employed or definitely when they have the risk. They bear the risk of no deliveries if they are contractors. Now, I was having a look at some research on this, and it was the Bureau of Investigative Journalism back in 2021, and they claimed that riders, it was Deliveroo riders, so all around the time of the Deliveroo float, earned only £2 per hour. And again, that does raise a lot of questions about welfare and reputational risk. That was for their independent gig workers, £2 per hour. However, Deliveroo contest that, and they would claim that riders earned £13 per hour at the busiest times. Now, obviously, at the busiest times might be correct, but if you're relying on this as your income, you really, face a lot of risk in terms of not being able to earn enough to live on. So one thing here I would encourage you to think about is collective action from delivery drivers. Perhaps couriers are going to band together to demand better pay. We're seeing themes of this already. I know it's a slightly different example, but I'm sure you've read recently about Amazon having to recognize its first union. Now, they're employed workers, but at that lower pay point. And so that collective action coming through. Think about the Uber case that applied to all workers. And in the Uber case, it's quite interesting because not all of the independent contractors wanted to be treated as employees. So I would say our couriers are our other key stakeholder. We've had the restaurant, and I've encouraged you to put yourself in those shoes and think about that. We have our customers, and I've encouraged you to think about what the customer wants. Now we have the couriers. Try and get a feel for what the couriers think. Some might love being gig workers because of all the flexibility it gives. Others might be more of a risk to our business as well, and maybe seek collective action. I would say, because our couriers are essential, another risk that we need to think about is, what if we are not an employer of choice, or independent contractors don't want to work for us, or other industry players, let's say like Munch Bike, offering better terms and conditions? That impact, if we can't get couriers, would be catastrophic on our business, because we would not be able to deliver within the speeds that our consumer wants. So loads of risks, around these that you really do need to be on top of. Okay. So that is the industry analysis. I know I spent a lot of time on that, but hopefully I've been able to explain why it is so important. So now we are going to have a look at Snack Wheel in more detail. So on this page, again, it reminds us that Snack Wheel was Wistaria's first major home delivery platform. So it might have that first mover advantage and that brand recognition that we've talked about. So the founders wanted to exploit complementary growth, both in online shopping and the demand for fast food. And up here, we have some statistics for the US, in this case, to show that it is a growing market in many, many jurisdictions. Again, we are reminded here about our young consumers. So cross-reference back to that Wistarian information that we had. So 88% of 20 to 39-year-olds in Wistaria eat fast food at least once a month. And I would encourage you to put yourself in the shoes of consumers and think what is important to them. Again, I'm thinking around the environmental issues and everything that we have talked about there before. The company was quoted on the Wistarian Stock Exchange in 2016. Now, one thing that I definitely think you should cast your eye over is the Deliveroo float that happened in early 2021. That's an interesting case because it will give us an analogous quoted company to have a look at, and we can make comparisons, between their board and Snack Wheel's board, between their financials and Snack Wheel's financials. But have a little look at the press that came around the time that Deliveroo floated, because it's very interesting. What you will note there is that several major institutional investors came out and said that they would not invest in Deliveroo, and Deliveroo's IPO or flotation was not seen to be as successful as it could have been. Now, what is interesting is the reason that the institutional investors said that they were not interested in Deliveroo was because of its reliance on independent contractors for couriers. So that hot topic, the last thing that we looked at the industry, that has had a direct financial impact on Deliveroo. And we could argue that then that is a key risk for Snack Wheel. So perhaps when Snack Wheel is looking at raising further finance from the stock exchange, perhaps Wistarian institutional investors will take the same view. So what the investors said at that time is they didn't think it was ethically correct. So there are environmental social governance issues there. And also they felt the fact of the legislation changing. So these gig workers having more rights and therefore changing the cost base of Deliveroo was too high. So that would change the financial situation. So it's an absolutely vital area that you have a look at. So over here, generally, we would say that being quoted makes it easier to raise debt and equity finance. I totally agree with that, but let's have a look at the other side of that and perhaps some difficulties that analogous companies such as Deliveroo have had. Now, when we look at the growth here, I would also get you to think about other opportunities for growth, because this again is quite a hot topic. So we mentioned here grocery collection, and that is becoming very popular. So we had Amazon Fresh was an example of doing that. And I know in the UK, the Co-op has recently, the Co-op being small retail convenience stores partnered with Deliveroo in some areas to deliver groceries, sometimes within 30 minutes to 1 hour. There's also, there's a range of examples. I know in the UK, Currys, which is an electrical store, has recently partnered with Uber to make 30-minute deliveries, obviously of smaller electrical goods. And maybe other areas for growth, if we think about the digital strategy, they might be a little bit out there, but sometimes we see this in strategic case study. Let's think, instead of couriers, do we maybe look at delivery bots? So examples of that we see in the US and actually in the UK. Maybe you want to have a little bit of a look at Amazon Scout robots, and they're being trialed. Now, Scout robots clearly need legal permission to operate on roads and pavements, and they have a weight limit, but potentially that could work for fast food. That's very much in its early stages, but if SnackWheel is looking at new innovations that might disrupt its industry, that might be interesting. On that note, you might have seen, deliveries by drone. That was something else that Amazon tried out. I think they called it Prime Air. That didn't work out, and they've pulled out of that and they're winding that up. But it does show that this sort of convenience and this delivery to home is really an area for innovation and change. One of my favorite sources of information for that, it's sort of an online magazine, is Wired, W-I-R-E-D. So that might be somewhere that you might want to have a look at sort of innovative sides there. And actually, interestingly enough, Amazon has a large stake in Deliveroo. So Deliveroo at one stage nearly collapsed, which shows the vulnerability of this operating model. And Amazon made a huge investment, I think back in 2019, in Deliveroo. So it didn't do so well in its own fast food business. It did try that out through Amazon Prime. It didn't really work in the UK and the US. But it has a stake in Deliveroo. So again, interesting to see where some of that finance is coming from. Right, let's look at SnackWheel a little bit more. Now, it is Westaria's largest fast food delivery platform. We know it was the first, and it's also the largest. So I wonder what KPIs they are using. KPIs are a key area of the syllabus for strategic case studies. So is it measuring the largest by revenue, by number of orders, by registered users, perhaps? So it's hard to say, but we have some information here that we are needing to have at our fingertips going forward. So it is signed up with 12,000 outlets. You may remember from earlier on, Westaria has 55,000 outlets in total, so great coverage there. It covers 190 separate catchment areas in every town and city in Westaria. So great coverage there, but if it's in every town and city in Westaria, does that mean that it's going to need to look at other areas in which to grow and expand? Those other areas might be still within Westaria, but delivering different things. I've given you the example of groceries and electrical goods, or are we going to look at fast food delivery in other jurisdictions? And again, we've already talked about that. And we're also told that SnackWheel has 23 dark kitchen facilities, which accommodate 68 separate dark kitchens. And we know that helps with capacity for our restaurant partners, and we earn a rent from those. Okay, now we know our restaurateurs and fast food outlets are key stakeholders. We're now going to have a look at key partners specific to SnackWheel. So you need to know this inside out. Now, it gives a lot of information here that I'm not going to read to you. You can read that for yourself. But what I want you to focus on are the types of food that they offer. You will see that SnackWheel has a partner to cover all of those 5 most popular types of fast food that we saw in the industry overview and also in that Westarian pie chart. So they cover all of those. The other information I want you to focus on is the hours of operation. So when they're open, that will be important information for our algorithm. And more interestingly, it looks at the peak and the busy times. That are going to be times where really our algorithm has to do a lot of hard work in terms of anticipating those peak times and managing demand from consumers with the supply from the restaurants and the supply of couriers at that time. Clearly, I would say algorithms work on historic data, so perhaps there will be an unexpected event in some of our exam day unseen's. Okay. Now, what I would also say here is Snackwheel appears to work with a lot of restaurant chains as opposed to independent restaurants. And again, I like a balanced argument that brings advantages, but it also brings some disadvantages. The advantages that it brings is, as we will see shortly, Snackwheel has some of the biggest names. And I think undoubtedly that is going to attract consumers to our platform, and therefore we can earn our commissions. But the downside of that, I suppose a way to describe that, a real world example, would be during the pandemic, actually Deliveroo was not particularly well prepared when you compare it to something like Uber Eats or Just Eat. Now, Deliveroo really focused on a lot of big names. And as I said, that brings a lot of advantages. But initially in the pandemic, they all closed down, and Deliveroo was less prepared and less flexible than Uber Eats, which had a much, much bigger resource base, or Just Eat had a lot more relationships with local independent restaurants and fast food deals. So actually Uber, because of its resource base, and Just Eat, because of its working with independent operators, actually did better. So let's be critical, both the upsides and downsides, about the range of restaurant partners that we have here. So our first one is Tasty Burger, and I think this is analogous to McDonald's. It's Westaria's most popular burger chain. It is the largest and the most profitable chain. So I would say this is going to be a key stakeholder, very powerful because of its size and influence. And remember that burgers count for 40% of fast food revenue in Westaria. Now, as we would expect, it has a breakfast menu, pancakes, eggs, coffee. It's then going to have its main menu to cover lunches and evening meals in the form of burgers, fries, desserts, etc. And this is an interesting fact. Tasty Burger is open for 24 hours a day. That's absolutely great, I would say, for Snackwheel, because it means that our consumers, our customers rather, will have access to something 24 hours a day. Now, here are details of the peak times. What I want you to do is look for any overlap between Tasty Burger's peak times and some of the other providers, because the algorithm then might have really difficult choices. So if there is a shortage of couriers, who does it prioritize? Does it prioritize Tasty Burger because of its power, or we'll see Steam Pizza in a moment? Does it prioritize Steam Pizza? Is that going to cause some sort of conflict for us? So if we have tight capacity at peak times, that could be interesting. Now, I think this is another key piece of information down here. Tasty Burger is a large quoted company itself, so it's got a lot of resource and is at the forefront of development and is always looking at ways to develop revenue streams. So perhaps this is something that we're going to see in our unseen information. And from a risk management point of view, this is something our board need to be aware of. I mean, the worst case scenario for us would be that Tasty Burger develops its own platform. So it decides essentially not to outsource its home delivery to Snackwheel. And I would encourage you to have a look at something like the My McDonald's app, which is in many locations. Now, the My McDonald's app, it does offer discounts and rewards. You can order and pay for in-store or drive-through or takeaway. But also, if you look at that, you will see McDelivery. And it's really badging itself as having a night off cooking. So it's going to the home market. And there's some pictures you can see online of that. They have, you know, highly branded bikes in the sort of McDonald's yellow and red colors with the McDonald's logo. And when you look at it in some jurisdictions, it does say that you may get your McDelivery through Uber Eats or Just Eat, but also it might be their own McDelivery couriers. So I think that's potentially something that Tasty Burger might look at, and that would be a huge risk in terms of, if burgers are 40% of West Arian fast food revenue, that's going to be very, very significant and material to Snackwheel. What other things may they do to be at the forefront of technology? Again, McDonald's is not a bad example. So they use a lot more technology to be more efficient. So you can go in and do self-service ordering. And again, we're starting to see a change in the menu, more health conscious, more environmental conscious as well. Perhaps even we will to see a joint venture, maybe, I don't know, between Snackwheel and Tasty Burger. But we've got to remember, Tasty Burger has a lot of power. So what negotiating power does Snackwheel have in return? So a really, really interesting example. The next one is Steam Pizza. This is West Arian's largest pizza restaurant. So again, another jewel in our crown. We've got the largest burger chain. We've got the largest pizza chain. You may recall pizzas are 25% of our revenue for there. So when you look at the operating hours, you will see there is some crossover between Steam Pizza and Tasty Burger. This potentially could be a problem. Who do we prioritize? Let's say if we are lacking couriers, and what might be the difference between that. The other thing I would like you just to have a wee look at for pizza delivery, it popped into my mind when I was reading this. Actually, Apple of iPhone fame has innovated and patented a pizza delivery box that allows air and moisture to escape, so you won't get soggy pizza crust. So again, you know, we're in the business of home delivery, having the highest quality food in terms of, I know it's fast food, but we want it to be there fresh and hot. So maybe that innovative pizza box could be something that we look at as well. Moving on, Baguetto is a sandwich restaurant, and we will look at Lusk Chicken as a chicken restaurant. Both Baguetto and Lusk Chicken are the second players in the market. So that begs a question of who has the largest sandwich place and who has the largest chicken place. Sandwiches are still very important, especially to that core market round about lunchtime and workers, for office workers. Sandwiches 15% of West Arian revenue and chicken at 12%. So perhaps on a unseen, maybe the largest sandwich or largest chicken operators will come to us. What would be the impact of taking those on our existing partnerships? We're always going to have to think about the impact on existing relationships, both Baguetto and Lusk Chicken, but also on Tasty Burger and Steam Pizza, because they are going to want to continue to have the best service from us. And then Bonnigan's is our next relationship here. So they're a chain of bakeries. And again, a little bit like Baguetto, they have more of that morning and lunchtime side of things. But still, if we had an overlap in demand between Baguetto and Bonnigan's, what would our algorithm do and what would be the impact of that? So I do want you to know those partners inside out, but also think about what new partners might be coming along in our unseen information and what we would do. And I would always encourage you, yes, think about the upsides, but definitely think about the impact on those existing partners as well. So I am going to pause there. We will cover the rest of it in the second pre-scene in detail. So in the second pre-scene, we will look at the board in more detail, and my favorite or most used area would be the principal risks in more detail. So as I said, don't be frustrated that we've only started to look at Snackwheel. definitely. It's very, very important that we understand the industry. And I hope I've given you a lot of industry examples to, you know, whet your appetite, get you interested as well. And then the rest of it will be covered in the next Prescene, which in UK time is on Monday night. So I'm just going to have a little look at some questions here to see if there's anything else that I can answer for you at this stage. So can you bring in real life statistics like the 205% growth in food delivery? Absolutely. Definitely. I always say to my students, and I encourage my students to read around your industry. You don't need to learn everything off by heart, but let's, you know, if you were reporting to the board of Snackwheel, clearly you're going to have a knowledge of what Deliveroo or Uber Eats did, or the growth in the market. So yes, is my answer to that. That will significantly improve your answers. Another thing about reading around your industry, like I said, you don't need to learn everything off by heart, but it gives you ideas. Definitely gives you ideas for the answer, and also reduces the risk that you're going to suggest something that isn't suitable for your industry. So I love the fact that you're you know, looking at those real life stats and examples. My students always say that typically in their actual exam day answer across the 3 tasks, they might make between, you know, 6 and 10 real world references. Sometimes they come all in one task. You know, it's not possible to make references in every task, but as long as they're, you know, in some place in your paper, I think it helps you stand out from the next student. And one thing the markers say to us is they're assessing if you're ready to be, you know, an FD. And an FD is always going to know about their industry, be able to quote examples, quote what competitors do, know about the customer. So that's an excellent question, and I would definitely recommend that. So I'm just seeing if there are any other questions that we've not done. I'll pop in the chat box and have a wee look. I think that's it. So if you do have any other questions, so I can see one new message coming now. Yes, I appreciate I have an awful lot to say. There's so much to cover in this Prescene material, and I think the benefit, and hopefully you'll find it a benefit, is that they are recorded. So we find a lot of our students will rewatch these, so you can pause, you can take some notes and do it that way. But I do think there's so much information to cover in this that they are quite pacey sessions, but I'm hoping that the fact that they're recorded will be of benefit to you. And Thomas also said that the upload would be there sort of the next working day. So I'm really, really hoping that that will help you, but I will bear that in mind as well. Thank you. Any other questions? No? Well, if this is the last time I see you, very, very best of luck for strategic case study. I really hope that you enjoy studying. It's an absolutely great topic, and so much to you know, to get around. Hopefully you've got a good idea from today of key stakeholders, why you need to understand those, a flavor of the industry, and I hope to see a lot of you on the second Prescene webinar as well. So thank you so much for your time and attention today. Take care, everyone.